Good afternoon. Welcome to day 24 of the International Great to Black Read Aloud Day. Today is Sports Literature Day, and we are excited about reading works written by Black people concerning sports. Sports play a huge part in American culture, and Blacks are a big part of that industry. And so we are reading aloud today from two selections, and we'll get started. Our first selection is the Black Athlete Reader by Professor Joel Plummer, and it is an annotated bibliography for the 21st century Black athlete. I highly recommend you provide this to if you have children who are involved in sports, or if you yourself are involved in sports, if you are a coach, if you are a coach's assistant, if you are a trainer, if you are involved in sports in any way, and you are influencing the lives of others, especially children and teenagers and college students, I highly recommend that you get this for them. And so you can buy it on digital platforms as well, just as I have, and read it. Again, our selection today is the Black Athlete Reader. Even if you are a professional athlete, this will be of great use to you, I believe. So we are going to read from what is this? Excuse me. And this starts with a quote. What is this? If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies for me and eaten alive. Audre Lorde. This book is an annotated bibliography. So in essence, it is a suggested reading list with each listed reading or documentary, followed by a short description of the work and why it is relevant to Black athletes today. The goal of this list is to, 1, give Black athletes intellectual ammunition that they can use in their fight to accurately assess and define their position in society. 2, aid them in the prioritizing of the social, political, economic, and educational issues that they can affect. And 3, help them locate themselves in the history and tradition of leader athletes. This is not intended to be an exhaustive list, but rather one that can be used as a springboard to future study while providing a sufficient working understanding of Black athletic power. Despite white supremacist laced calls for athletes to just shut up and entertain them, Black athletes have a long legacy of standing as spokespersons and leaders for their communities. In fact, in the grand scope of Black history, it is the star athlete that refuses to take on the challenge of uplifting their people that is an oddity. Until recently in America's history, the Black athlete leader was not uncommon. For most of Black people's existence in America, mainstream white America systematically shut them out of the avenues of upward mobility, except for sports and entertainment. Consequently, the most famous representatives of the thoughts of the Black community have been athletes and entertainers. Howard Bryan points out that white people were not willing to listen to people like the first Black Rhodes Scholar, Aloud, despite having studied at Oxford, the University of Berlin, and earning a PhD from Harvard. White American culture offered no platform for a man of Locke's abilities, but it did leave the door slightly open for athletes and entertainers to be seen and heard, and they capitalized on the opportunity. Legendary athlete and entertainer Paul Robeson, who was born in 1898, never ceased in his direct and overt criticism of the blatant racism that was embedded into the American way of living. At different times and to varying degrees, Robeson's legacy as athlete, entertainer, leader was carried on by numerous athletes through the late 1970s, when a shift towards green, being more important than Black, began to take root. That's money. By the 1990s, the athlete had traded his voice and responsibility to the broader Black community in exchange for huge paydays became common. For nearly a century, Black athletes used their voices to carry their people to a better place. Now much of America expects the voice of the Black athlete to simply be used to carry corporations to higher and higher yearly profits. The sum of these suggested works is a knowledge base that the Black athlete can use to confidently regain their position as a portion of the brain trust that helps to guide and empower Black people in their fight to end their oppression. Even though the 21st century is more open to hearing the voices of Black people in other disciplines than in the past, that does not mean that the Black athletes should abandon their posts as defenders of the larger Black community. It merely means that there is finally more space for other prominent Black minds to join them. And in this bibliography, Professor Plummer lists things, and he groups them in terms of sports texts, and he groups them also in terms of his putting Blacks in sports in historical context. He also does a listing of contextual documentaries, and he provides an epilogue, and I'll read just a portion of that. On the last day of all my courses, I end with the same parting advice. No one is coming to save you. No matter how much you admire Black leaders of the past, none of them will rise from the dead to fix your problems. In the story of Black people's quest for freedom, you are the superhero that saves the day. Nobody else is coming to rescue you. There is absolutely no reason for Black athletes to question whether they have the right to stand in the spotlight as representatives of their people's demands and dreams. Many of you have almost superhuman abilities of focus and confidence. Some of you have literally spent decades training and sacrificing to reach a single goal in sports. That unflappable determination and patience is exactly what is needed in the everlasting fight for Black freedom and equality. Additionally, having completed at least some college makes collegiate athletes more educated than most Americans. Professional athletes have seen more of America and the rest of the world than almost all other Americans. You all have been to places and in rooms with people of power that everyday citizens will never get to be. Again, our first selection for today has been the Black Athlete Reader by Professor Joel Plummer, and we will continue with our second selection for today as well. Our second selection for today on Sports Literature, Day 24, is Things That Make White People Uncomfortable by Micheal Bennett. I don't know if you can see that, maybe like that. By Micheal Bennett, okay? And so, Micheal Bennett is a very well-known athlete, and I recommend you get this too. He has quite a sense of humor. So let's talk, and we're actually going to read excuse me. We're actually going to read from the preface of this. It says, the sit down on fear. The sit down, sit on fear. I couldn't see another hashtag Sandra Bland, hashtag Tamir Rice, hashtag Walter Scott, hashtag Eric Garner. The list goes on and on and on. At what point do we do something about it? That is a quote from Colin Kaepernick. It was our first preseason game in 2017. I couldn't even tell you who we were playing because the thoughts in my mind were like cars, smashing into each other with screeching tires, broken glass, and blood on the streets. I was thinking about American Nazis marching in Charlottesville and the young woman who was killed. I was also thinking about Charlene Aloud, mother of 4, pregnant, who called Seattle police for help and they shot her to death with 7 bullets, 4 in her back. I was thinking about my friend Colin Kaepernick, I was thinking about my friend Colin Kaepernick denied a job in the National Football League because of his protest against racism and police violence that he staged during the national anthem, the stand he took for equality and justice. I was thinking about my mom, a teacher for over 20 years, who taught me to question everything. I was thinking about the gap between what we are taught the flag represents and the lived experience of too many people. I was thinking about all of this, and as the anthem started to play, I sat down. There was no way I could stand for the national anthem, and there was no way I would until I saw this country take steps toward common decency. By not standing, excuse me, by not standing, I wanted to honor the founding principles of this country, the freedom of self-expression, liberty, and the equal opportunity to pursue happiness, and challenge us to try to reach those goals. I wanted to use my platform to inspire young people to see us not just as athletes or pitchmen for products, but as change makers. It was something I had to do. Charlottesville brought back memories of growing up in Texas and being afraid sometimes to even breathe. It brought tears to my eyes to see people armed to attack somebody because of the color of their skin or their religion. I couldn't believe it took Trump 48 hours to respond. And then I couldn't believe when he said, quote, very fine people, end quote, were marching in an army of hate and violence. At this point, I think if you're being silent, you're making a choice in taking a side. As NFL players, we cannot be silent anymore just because we have the ability to hide beneath our helmets. I can't hide behind the shield. I can't hide behind the glamour and glitz of football and fame. The reality is that I'm a black man in America, and I'm going to be a black man in America long after I'm out of this league. There is too much in this country dragging down the poor, women, and kids, and we can't be hiding behind gated communities pretending these things are happening somewhere else. So I sat during the anthem, and the hate came in, as sure as night follows day. I'll leave out the worst, but I will say that the fact that it made people angry, uncomfortable, and even hateful was proof that I was right to make a stand and take a seat. If I protested for the right of men to grow beautiful beards like my own, no one would have cared. And if no one cared, then I would have been wasting everyone's time. Of all the responses, what bothered me most was when people said I was dishonoring the military. It got under my skin because I also heard from a ton of veterans who said, we wore the uniform precisely so people would have the freedom to protest. It bothered me because my father was in the military. I love my father, but I don't love the hatred I see growing in this country. I love the soldier who, after I started my protest, sent me an American flag from Afghanistan, shaded by dust and dirt from thousands of miles away, and said he stood with me. I want to use this platform to reach people, to encourage us to see how unselfish we can be. Just because people don't eat what you eat, just because they're not from where you're from, just because they don't pray to the same God you pray to, just because they don't love who you love, doesn't mean they should be treated like they are anything less than human. I want us to aspire to love one another in all our difference. To me, sitting during the anthem is not being divisive. The way those Nazis and Fox News are using the flag is divisive. My hope is to bring people together. It's so much easier to put up walls. I also took a stand for Colin Kaepernick. Colin is one of the best fighters for justice and equality in sports history. I think people assumed the anthem actions would go away because he was out of the NFL. But there's still a fight going on. Racism and social inequality haven't gone away. Just because Colin Kaepernick is not playing doesn't mean the fight is over. Like Fred Hampton said, quote, you can jail the revolutionary, but you can't jail the revolution, end quote. They can lock Kaepernick out of the league, but more and more players are taking up the cause. If the franchise owners thought that keeping Colin out would silence us, that just insults us as men. Guess what? Considering the ego and drive it takes to be a pro athlete, being told to shut up and play, right back. It makes some people so angry to see us taking a stand or taking a knee. I get that they watch football to escape and they view us as entertainers, here to give them a break from the so-called real world. But we aren't machines. We are human beings, and we aren't paid to stand for an anthem. We are paid to play football. This is our real world. Maybe some people figure that being a professional athlete somehow graduates us from racism. They think we're not that black. We're in another category. But if I'm someplace where people don't know me as Micheal Bennett, I am a black man, judged by the color of my skin. I lived through this last August in Las Vegas, where I was put on the ground, a weapon placed against the back of my head, and a police officer said he was going to blow my effing head off. I'll be talking more about that night later, because in this case, what happened in Vegas isn't staying in Vegas. We have the right to protest, and we, like anyone else, can try to be heard. They tell us to stick to sports when we speak out on issues, but they don't seem to have a problem when we're making commercials, selling their kids sneakers they can't afford, or fast food that will give them colon cancer. I don't see how that is sticking to sports, but somehow that is considered okay. This cartoon by my brother Martellus nails it. The reaction to all of this went to the charts when Donald Trump gave a speech at a rally in Alabama that attacked us for protesting and went after the NFL for not firing us. He also described any player who took a knee as an SOB. Well, all right then, no confusing how he feels. He took the flame, excuse me, he took the flame that Colin had lit and poured gasoline all over it. But Donald Trump never played football and does not understand our brotherhood. I'll go into that later, what the NFL brotherhood is and what it means. But I knew that our brotherhood would come into play. That's why, as soon as I heard what he said, and my phone started blowing up and the fury of my friends was making my ears bleed, I felt really calm, almost like a big bearded Buddha. Even though he singled out of those of us who protested, I felt like he was taking on the whole NFL. So I never really felt alone. Instead, and I know this might sound twisted, I felt an incredible sense of positivity. I just thought, hey, he's entitled to his opinion. I'm not about to go back and forth with him because that's not what this is about. I don't know who that helps. A lot of players were tweeting and talking volumes of anger. NBA player Chris Paul even dared Trump to say it to our faces. He hasn't. My only public response was that he shouldn't be saying SOB, no matter what he thinks about us, because president or not, you don't talk about people's mothers. And I'm a little side of black people mother anyway. In a tweet I wrote, my mom is a beautiful lady and she has never been a bee. But I was also proud. Wow. We got under the skin of the president of the United States. I was grateful. Even though he disagreed with us, he turned it into a worldwide conversation. Maybe he wasn't willing to have a discussion with us about what we were protesting and why it mattered. No beer summit for us. But his comments did allow for us to go global with the problems of racial inequality in this country. He also brought the NFL family together, activating the brotherhood as if his comments were some kind of NFL bat signal. His mistake was taken on the whole NFL. Owners don't like it when you tell them who to hire and fire, and you don't talk about people's moms. He also crossed the line. He is a habitual line stepper when he said that the game had become too soft. Everyone in the NFL, from owners to players, knows the toll this game takes on our bodies. And nobody who sees us after games or in the training room would dare say such a thing. In that moment, I saw the part of the man that makes me feel pity. He has no ability to walk in other people's shoes, to see the world from another perspective, from Puerto Rico to the NFL. He doesn't care about Dave Durson, Junior Seau, Kitty Stabler, or anyone who passed away before his time. He doesn't know what it's like to wrench your neck because someone faster and stronger than anyone who played even 20 years ago hits you like a truck. Yes, the rules have changed, but that's because players are so big and fast now. There wouldn't be any of us left if the headhunting days were still in effect. I heard that part of his speech and just said, he don't really know, you know? And this has been our selection, our second selection for today. And it is Things That Make White People Uncomfortable by NFL athlete Micheal Bennett. I highly encourage you to get this. You can get it digitally as well. And it is a great read. And so it's day 24. Day 24. We have been at this 24 days, joyfully reading every day. We are still inviting you to join us. Come on and read, or record it and read and upload it. It doesn't matter. We just want you to read aloud. We do want to thank you for listening. We appreciate all the comments that you've been sending and been telling us. We hope that you've been learning something just as we have during the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. We've covered a multitude of topics. We still have 4 more days to go. And tomorrow our topic is loss, grief, and transition. And so if you have something written by someone who's Black that you would like to read, we invite you to read tomorrow on loss, grief, and transition, which will be day 25. This has been day 24. I am so excited. Again, we want to remind you of our selections today. The first one was by Professor Joel Plummer, The Black Athlete's Reader, Volume 1, an annotated bibliography for the 21st century Black athlete, and Things That Make White People Uncomfortable by Micheal Bennett. We hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll see you tomorrow for day 25 of the International Great Black Read Aloud Day. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.